What we have here is a failure to communicate. Man, I did like 6 films on the teardown on this motorcycle. And I deleted the whole works of them by accident. I'm doing these films to show my brother, and for the young fellers, the up and comers that like the older bikes, on motorcycle mechanics ethics. Ugh. But that's okay. That's okay. Hey, look, man, you fall down, you get up, dust off, go again. So, and I'm sorry about that, because I was showing the leak down I did on the engine. That's the engine back there. And anyway, so what I have here is I have 9% leak down in the front cylinder and just over a 10% leak down in the rear cylinder. And whenever you're doing a leak down, which is not a compression test, I have so many guys, like before I tune a bike, do anything to a motorcycle, I do a leak down so I can see the heart of the operations. And what a leak down is you're putting in so many psi of air into a cylinder with both valves closed at TDC. Okay, so and then you hold it and you take a look to see how much leak down's going through, what your percentage is, and where it is leaking through. So on this engine, when I did the leak down, I did notice when I pulled the plug was very black. Black plug, that can be just last time it was started up. I noticed the gas that I pulled out of this bike smelled terrible. So it'd been in there for a long time. I did ride this girl a couple years back. So that's probably the last time it had gas. Who knows? It's really important. And I'll show you young fellers the ethics in reading plugs. Oh, I know how to read a plug. Yeah, I'm sure you do. But I see guys claim that all the time, and then they do it wrong. Because first off, you get the bike to operate in temperature. Now, you never pull... Now, this is a golden rule, which is meant to be broken every now and then. But you never pull a plug hot out of your head. Not on a Harley, not on a Brit bike. Because the threads on the plug are really sharp, and when they're sharp and they're hot, you're pulling a little bit of material out every time you pull your plug, right? It's cutting a little bit of aluminum off each time. So you need to watch for that. So you make it a golden rule not to. But in the instance of reading plugs, I would warm a bike up. Say I'm having I'm having a mishap at 2,500 RPM, 3,000 RPM or something. Well, I know that's in my intermediate circuit. So what I would do is I would ride off to the highway, and I'd have the bike under operating temperature. I'd pull over and I'd have a beer. Now, don't drink and drive. And let the engine cool down just a bit. I'd pull the plug and I'd put a different plug in, like a new plug or a clean plug that works. And then I would take off down the highway and I would duplicate. I would ride it at the trouble spot, see what's going on. And I'd give it a few minutes, like, I run it around 5 miles, 3 miles, 5 miles, right? I don't know what that is in clicks, and I really don't care. I'm a boomer, man. Then what I would do is at that RPM that I wish to duplicate, I would kill my key, and I'd pull over to the side of the road, and I'd have another beer. When the engine cooled down a bit, enough, I would pull the plug, and then I would read the plug there. A lot of guys, they come off the road, and I'll be pulling the plug to do a leak down, and they start telling me about how they're burning. I said, well, not really. Well, why? Because, well, let's see, you did your cold start up, you had your enrichener on or your choke, then you headed down the highway. I don't know if you're in 3/4 plus throttle, but then you got to town, and then you had to go slow and idle your way through town, so on and so forth. So, like, you got 3 different fuel circuits that you're trying to read one out of that's contaminated the plug. So there is ethics to everything. So on this baby, we know we're leaking out of the base gaskets, so the top end's coming off. When I did the leak down, I did not hear anything coming out of the valves, so I shouldn't have to touch the valves unless there's something obvious. Looks like it's going to be something that's going to come up on the guy, right? So, but right now the heads are sound, but I got a lot of blow-by, 10% blow-by going past the rings. And when I took out the timing plug, when I was setting up my TDC for my leak down, as soon as I put the 80 psi to the cylinder, it was just coming out of the crank with the timing plug. I knew right there it was my rings. So we're in there anyway, so I'm probably just going to get some oversized rings, re-gap them, give the cylinders a quick hone. I'll check the cylinders out, because I have to fix the warpage on the bottom of the cylinders anyways. And I'll read how much taper's there and so on and so forth. And we'll do this as long as I don't delete the film this time. I had like 6 films on this thing. It was beautiful. It was poetry. And I screwed it all up. What can you do with boomers? Well, you can give them euthanasia. I guess liberal government, they're good for that. But other than that, you can't live with us and you can't shoot us. So here's the thing about what I noticed too. When I was taking the primary off and the clutch off, which all looked fine, and the primary was holding oil, I saw all these lines. Let's see if I can. Here, let me see if I can dial you in here. Okay. Be patient, be patient. This ain't McDonald's. Oh, where the heck? Oh, there we are. This thing is so stiff, man. It's really hard to use. A little bit of lube. Like my brother Earl says, just add lube, more lube. More lube. Yeah, I think I will put some lube on this. Earl, you got any extra lube? Yeah. That's what happens when you date over 40. Okay. Oh, man. Okay. Almost there. Oh. This is crazy, dude. Okay. Tap, tap. The Chinese shit. Just trying to get the right angle here. I want to get the oh. I tightened it up and now it got easier. I want to get right there. This is what I found. Okay, that should be good enough. Okay, so here's what I found. I saw these lines, and this is oil lines. So oil coming out of this sprocket, doing this, right? Splashing around. And this side of the bike was one, was the side covered in oil. And I looked at it and I said, "Yeah, you see this little gold thing? Well, that's your seal." Now, I touched it yesterday when I was filming, so I put the seal back in. I just took my knife. I went, "Hey, there's a seal here," and it was just riding out. So this fifth gear or fourth gear seal, main drive gear seal, was just floating around. So I wasn't holding anything. And then the other thing I checked, now this is funnier than heck, was almost every guy, and I've seen this in shops too, you know, this main nut, everybody thinks, I've seen these break off from this nut coming loose. It's like 110 foot-pounds of torque here. That's supposed to. So guys, the air hammer stuff on, they think it's good enough, and it's not. It's never good enough. Plus, I Loctite this baby too. So you either got to lock up your pulley, and there are inexpensive locking tools a guy can buy, or you lock up the transmission. So whenever I'm in a transmission and I'm going to install it in the bike, I lock the tranny up and I do my torque rate on the bench on this big baby here, this bad girl. So he was puking a lot of oil. So I went over and check this out. And then here, watch this. Now this had nothing to do with the nut. See that? That's the whole main drive gear. Right? There's a bushing in the main drive gear, and that's how worn the bushing is. And it's like, okay. So I go and I pull the transmission plug. And lo and behold, there's almost no oil in the transmission either. So there we go. Confirmation, confirmation, confirmation. So it wasn't just one oil leak he had. Like an old Harley, there was a few oil leaks that he had. And I'm sorry, man, I did such a good job on those films. I did. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the transmission, and I am going to wash that transmission off before I pull the top off. Yeah, and then we'll take a dive in the transmission. We'll take a peek and see how it looks, and what's there, what we need, what we don't need. You know, we weren't planning on a full tranny rebuild, but we do got to plug the leak, and the only way we're going to plug that leak is repairing that bushing, or replacing that bushing, period, on the main drive shaft. So it's like clearance is like less than a thou, right? So, well, it's more than less than a thou wobblage in there. So yeah, so that'll go on, and then hopefully I don't delete this, and hopefully I don't delete as I rip down the engine, because anytime you're taking a scooter apart, you want to read the parts as you take it down. You don't just rip parts off and throw them to the side. You're reading the parts. The motorcycle is telling you what's going on as you take this thing apart. Now, if I was just to take, say, my buddy's word for it, it's just a base gasket's leaking, and all I did was fix that. I could have pulled the whole top end and left the engine in the bike as well. But it's a kind of a pain in the ass on these frames, but I do it all the time. Anyways, but you know what? There's just more going on with that thing than what meets the eye. So we will take a look. We'll have it on the bench. I got this other engine that I have to build. I did films on that and fucked them up too, so don't worry about that. It was funny. Okay, so changing from this subject to the other subject. My buddy buys a bike. All right. Now, we know it has a screwed up engine. So, and it's like 20 below. And it was just miserable picking this bike up. Now, And we didn't notice. Now, I knew that whoever owned it dropped a cam follower. Or not a cam follower, but cam follower bearings, which basically, you know, for you young fellers, this is your cam follower, this is your tappet assembly, your lifter goes in here. So there's bearings in here, and what happens is they wear out. So anytime you're in your cam chest, you want to check. You don't want any up and down play. If you're getting up and down play, you got, see this one here? Okay, watch this. See that? Well, obviously this one did get replaced. Yes, I can replace these. But, so the bearings spit out, and it goes through your cam chest. It ends up in your oil system. It goes through your oil pump, and usually always destroys your oil pump and your breather hole gear. But this one was different. Now, as I was taking the motor down, I noticed silicone in the cases. Now, this was totally screwed up. Somebody was in this bottom end already once. Right now, the rods were worn out. The cylinders were well over 3 thou taper. I couldn't go 5 over pistons with it. I went 10 over. But somebody was in this bottom end, and they used silicone as the sealant. Never use silicone on your engine, boys. If a little piece of that stuff breaks off and it plugs one of your small oil journals, it's going to starve those bearings to that journal that feeds it. And it's going to starve the bearings by plugging the journal that feeds them, whichever one it decides to get stuck in, and then you're just going to blow up because your bearings aren't going to get any oil. I believe on this engine, it went in and it made its way through and plugged up oil to the tappet assembly, therefore destroying the cam follower bearings. Therefore, it did destroy the oil pump, but look what it did to this. Look at this gear. I don't know, can you see that? Look at that gear. Now, that's the first time I've seen that. I've had to fix a lot of these. I've seen cam followers. But this is your oil pump drive gear. It goes on the pinion. It goes this way. It goes on the pinion. And then you have your other drive gear on your oil pump shaft. Well, pump shaft was bent, so I couldn't even get the gear off. And actually, there's a little key that holds the gear on, and the key had spun. So this engine came to a very hard, abrupt stop. So, I checked out the cases. They're pretty good. Scraper plates, pretty good. There was a little bit there. Nothing to worry about. You can see here. I don't know. You see here, right in here. That's where bearings were going around. And you see how they wanted to feed in this hole? Okay, that's your oil hole for your pinion bearings. So somebody went in there and plugged up, I think the tappet. Now this breather gear hole, this determines how much oil gets passed. Like it's timed to pass oil into this case. It's also timed to allow the crank to breathe out pressure, right? So on this engine, it breathes up through the heads and into your air cleaner. On the older engines, say 89 and down, they were running a hose from down here. There's a place right in here where there used to be a hole, and they would run a hose up to your air breather, emission laws. But then you're running all that crap oil through your valves, which is not good for your valves. So I always make sure that my breathers are atmospherically dumped. What do I mean by that? Well, if I got the head breather, then I run a crossover and a hose down. And if I'm running 89 or less, then I just run this down to just a little piece of hose down the ground. How's it, Barnett? Is it Barnett? I know they make little breather thingies, you know, to hang off your hose down here. Look, if you're spilling oil out of there, it's either your oil pump isn't holding the oil back when the bike shut off, or this hole's been damaged, which this one has. Something went around and around in that. We're going to fix this hole. This hole's been damaged, and so what's happening is it's allowing oil to bypass and come out your breather. So if you're dripping oil through your carb, like through your air cleaner, and it's dripping off, that's a good sign that you have an issue. Now, like I say, because these are dry sump engines, which means they're not oil baths, which means the oil is in an oil tank and it gravity feeds to the engine. And so there's only supposed to be a few tablespoons of oil in the crank. So what happens is when you park, if it's getting past your check bulb on your oil pump, then it fills up the crank, and then the first thing the engine wants to do is get rid of that excess oil out of the crank. And so yeah, so like your bike's sitting all winter, whatever, for a length of time, you go to fire it up and you spill out some oil. And like, you know, it doesn't take a lot of oil to make a big, ugly splash. I've seen so many guys just freak out over this stuff, and I laugh at them, right? And then it stops. In fact, I had one buddy, a neighbor of mine, he went to fire up his bike in the spring, and he noticed, oh, where'd my oil go? It's not in my tank. So he fills his oil bucket. So when he fired up the bike, the engine, of course, all that oil was in the crank, and so the engine's trying to put it back in, but the tank was full, and so he had oil just like everywhere, right? And so like if your bike's sitting for a while, just put a pan under it and fire it up. But just because you see that, like if you're going down the road and you got oil continuously coming out of your breather, then it's more than likely this hole right here, the breather gear hole. So when I do this engine, I will repair this hole. I'm going to go with the 30 thou over. So the 93 and ups, the head breathers, S&S makes a breather gear for this, but instead of spinning, it's just a reed valve, right? And that way, if something happened in the future and the bearings go through, it won't destroy this hole again. We'll just get caught in there because the gear won't be going round and round. We'll be doing bids on that, but look at that, man. Look at that. And that's, I believe, that's from having silicone. Silicone is not a case sealant. Don't run the crap. And I've been finding lots and lots of silicone the last couple of years, 3 years. You know, get a bike in, and I'm just puking oil everywhere. And these, whatever they are, new age mechanics, progressives, they got silicone all over the place. So the poor guy has gone somewhere. Well, this guy was a helicopter mechanic. That guy is a oh yeah, okay, cool. Well, why all the silicone on your engine? And it's not, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work on these. You don't want the shit on there, because if it breaks off, plugs the journal, your engine's toast. Stay away from that crap. I like aircraft former gasket. I like, what is it? It's a Loctite. I don't know if I have any left here. I think it's Loctite 515, I believe. Yeah, I think I'm out of it. I think my brother, Mother Terry there, I think he Why do I got shoe goo on my shelf? Must be good for something. Anyways, I think Terry picked some up here recently. Some more Loctite. Yeah, it's not cheap. Loctite products aren't cheap. But you know what? For the most part, I just don't like Permatex. I'm not a Permatex fan. It's a bad Canadian copy or Chinese copy. I don't know what it is. I don't think Canada makes anything anymore. And whatever we did now, Canada's been destroyed by these progressive, liberal, communist, New World Order types. Yeah, like there is no Canada Day. There's Canada Memorial Day, I think. And yeah, it's sad. It's sad. We've lost everything our forefathers built for us. Yeah, they've destroyed us. Okay, so what I got to do now, so I wasn't planning on it, but finding the oil leak and the very loose bushing in this transmission, I'm going to pull the transmission out of the bike. So I'll take this cluster off, right, and what I do is I just undo the plate from the frame, and then the whole thing slides out easier. If you undo the tranny from the plate, it's a bitch. Might as well just pull the oil tank if you're going to do that. And the oil, I got 1 quart of oil, maybe, out of this tank, and it was black. It was black as a North Korean Saturday night. That's how black it was. I'm going to see how much oil's in this crank, or we are going to see how much oil's in this crank when we're done. And we'll inspect everything. You got the thing out, we're inspecting it. Also, my brother has an archaic Hall ignition stock, which has been replaced. So this is crazy. Wires, I don't know if you can see this, but fucking wires hanging down. It's just nuts, man. It's just nuts. What a spastic wiring job. But we're going to clean that up. I may have an extra old school crane single fire ignition. They're my faves. I've only had one fail on me from new, and that is the S&S's version, because S&S bought Crane, the motorcycle division of Crane, when Crane went out of business in 08, 09. So there's a couple of extras here. So I'm going to see about updating him from this garbage. Okay, so we're going, yeah, that's the other thing. We're going to go 3-inch open belt kick only. And he has a Super B. So on the phone, I'm talking to him, and I go, oh, kick only. And he thinks, like, you see, this is the difference between somebody who knows what the fuck they're talking about and wives' tales. And there's still the old wives' tales that were proven wrong a century ago, that guys are regurgitating. And here's the thing. He thinks still that he could put a ring gear on his starter. I'm like, no, you can't. And you know, Tommy likes to argue with me. He likes to argue because he has two of those. So here's the belt drive. Really nice, Primo Rivera. Really nice clutch setup on these things. Totally respectable, in fairly decent shape. Yeah, a couple things, but like I'm telling you, man, it's nice shape. I like it. Okay, so the starter gear would go on here. You see how thin this is? You're not turning anything down on the lathe and pressing nothing on here. And I'll show you the difference. Yeah. Okay. So here we have, okay, just a Harley clutch, right? Right. Now you see this? You see this starter gear? Yeah, they're pressed onto this hub. But look how much meat I have here, and you see the front? Okay, you have to have some meat to press on a starter gear. And that Primo Rivera was designed for kickstart only. So he's arguing with me. He's like, yeah, but my bike starts first kick. I said, until it doesn't. No, it starts first kick every time. I said, until it doesn't. We went round and round like this for a few minutes. I think I started laughing at him, and he finally got it. So, yeah, kickstart's set up. I'll pop these off, undo the motor or the transmission mounts. I will loosen the transmissions just so I can move it back and forth to make sure I can get my stuff out. That belt was super tight. That belt was so freaking tight, man. I couldn't believe it. Maybe it was slipping because there was so much oil going on the cogs of the pulleys. Probably. Yeah, you know, that could have very much been what's going on. But, you know, you're supposed to get like 5/8, 3/4 of play under so much poundage. And I think it's a 10-pound force. And, yeah, no, there was nothing there. So I loosened off the back wheel, kicked it forward to get the belt off so I could pull the transmission. But, yeah, we'll just get on her. So, again, apologies. I lost the first 6 films to this as I was taking her down, doing my readings, checking my specs. But we'll continue. Cheers.